All right, we will start now. So today we will discuss liberal approach to international politics. Liberal approach. I told you to IR, alternatively world politics, all right, or global politics. Approach remains the same, only the reference point changes with time, all right. So how do we conceptualize liberal approach to global politics? That probably would be the next question. How do we, when we first of all encounter this phrase, that is liberal approach to study international politics, how do we make sense of it? Question mark. That is the first question. So there are certain keywords when we study liberal approach to global politics or IR or world politics, and these are: number one, order. You are familiar with the word order, no? Number two is justice, all right, and number three is peace, all right. This is what they study. And why do we need to study it? Because the world in which we live is lacking order, lacking justice, and lacking peace. That is, the world in which we live is actually anarchical. What is anarchical? What is anarchical world order? Anarchical world order refers to an order, international order, which is not ruled by any uh, single powerful sovereign entity, but is a collectivity of individual sovereign states which are free to do what they want to do. Quoting the earlier quote, the old quote by uh, this guy, History of Peloponnesian War. What is his name? Anybody remembers? This text is actually one of the most significant texts in the international relations. History of Peloponnesian War, written in 401 BC by Thucydides. All right, he is thought to be one of the first scholars who studied the international, quote unquote. So the fourth common word, which is also important in liberal approach to international politics, is the concept of international, which suggests that we, while studying politics, transcend the boundary, domestic constraint of our own country, and try to understand what is happening beyond our own country. So order, justice, peace, and international, that is opposed or continuation of the concept of national. Thucydides, I told you, why do we study it? Because the society in which we live, international society, is also actually fifth concept, international society, invented by Hedley Bow, uh, uh, a scholar of international politics, English school, which is also alternatively known as this liberal approach. So Hedley Bull gives us a concept of international society. All right, he says that we can have international order, justice, peace, and so on, only and only when we can develop an international society which is revolving and evolving around common themes, common values, common norms, such as democracy, respect for human rights, constitutional values, and universalization of the discourse of democracy, rights, justice, and so on, common values, no, and norms. So there are three theories in international politics, above and beyond that, which are dominant, and you will do very good to go refer to the text that I have prescribed to you, and then you will probably find more about what I am referring to here. But international relations could not be understood without reference to the origin of the discipline as such. When did it start and where we are? So actually, if you go to the genealogy or the history of the discipline, you will find that 1919 a meeting was convened at the University of Aberystwyth. in London, which actually established international relations as a subdiscipline of political science to do what? Can you can you intuitively figure out why was it done? Because the World War One was raging and people were suffering because of it. The data you could find by reference to Eric Hobsbawm. He tells us in grave detail how many people died. So he tells us that almost 20% of the graduates from Oxford University, from Cambridge University, from Science Po and so on, they were killed because of the war. So the whole generation was lost. Families were destroyed because of the World War One. So the one problem that they encountered was how to avoid war, because war is so destructive. It destroys families, destroys people. How do we avoid it? So they thought that the first thing would be to study the cause of war, so that to avoid all future wars. No, so they decided at the University of Aberystwyth to establish a discipline of international relations, and the role of Woodrow Wilson's 14-point plan, under which the principle of self-determination, respect for the sovereignty of other countries, although the question of decolonization was not taken up, the white and the dominated imperial discipline. This is called international relations, because when it was established, the concern of the global south or the then colonized countries was not taken up. So that is the high liberal period in the study of international politics, when after the end of the First World War, this optimism came up because of the horror of the First World War, that we must study international relations in a principled manner. We must understand it, the condition of war above all. And when we understand it, our next job is to avoid all future wars. No? For that purpose, Woodrow Wilson's 14-point plan you could refer to. But all that optimism, this is also called idealist period in the history of international relations. They call it idealism. Who calls it idealism? The realists call it idealist, because actually the idealist or liberal principle could not stop the Second World War. It again broke out in September 1939. So all that optimism was dusted, and that is why when you read Baylis and Smith, the chapter on realism starts. I remember when I was in my college, I used to read that book. Uh, Realism, he says, grew up from the ashes of idealism. That is, where it was destroyed, it could not prove useful. Where it was in deed and principle put to complete misuse, totally useless, there emerged realism. And realism, of course, we will deal further. It is not in the syllabus, but realism is the dominant theory of international relations, because it takes nation state as a primary unit of political analysis, and the Marxists and realists less or more share sometimes common, because they both are empiricists. That is, they will talk in is rather than was or should be. है ना? So you must understand that. But I was referring to the concept of anarchy. No? So where does it come from? When idealists were trying to theorize the world politics, they first of all agreed that the world in which we live, it lacks order. That is, there is no sovereign body beyond and above the state which can regulate their common conduct. So you should be clear in your mind what is international anarchy whenever it comes. International anarchy does not refer necessarily to chaos, no, to disruption and so on, but to the general principle that it is the state which is sovereign, not anybody else. That is, there is nobody above and beyond the nation state in international politics to regulate its affairs. And it can best be summarized by recent reference to the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, wherein you see, despite the pressure building up at the European Union level and also at the level of the United Nations, such as the United Nations Security Council, they have not been able to actually either deviate or diverge or stop the course of the war. It is ebb and flow, but it is continuing. And I will continue to discuss liberal approach. We will understand it only through chronological reference. That is how it will become clear to us. So, 1939, realists come and they start criticizing idealists. They say that you are not practical. You are referring to should, that is what should happen in the future, but you are not careful about what is here. No, so you are fantastic and so on. And Hans de Margenthau and E.H. Carr, the two proponents who criticize liberalism, liberalism, and then many people came, Kenneth Walters, John Mayer Seymour, but the Cold War rivalry that started taking place after the end of the Second World War, division of the world into the communist East and the capitalist West. It was most accurately described, explained, interpreted, or made sense of, as you can say, by the use of the realist uh, theory of international politics, because it was taking the case as it is and trying to fit the existing reality into a pre-established, a prior paradigm, a theory already decided. No, so that is something that you should be mindful of. We will move to this, continue this engagement after what happened to uh, liberal approach to international politics after the dissolution of the USSR. Francis Fukuyama's End of History, I was referring to, if you remember, in which he tells that after the dissolution of the USSR, liberalism as an idea has triumphed, and there is no other contending idea. And it is the liberalism, liberal democratic state, which shall inherit the future and which will be an idea unchallenged. But then uh, the war, ethnic war in Eastern Europe, no, war and terror in Afghanistan, no, and then war in Iraq and Syria, and the allegation that the liberalism, liberal idea, earlier during the colonial time it promoted, justified the imperial domination. Now it justifies neo-imperial and neo-colonial domination. All right, we will continue. I just gave you summary, but I will tomorrow I will start again from 1939, where now we'll be taking the text, Woodrow Wilson's 14-point plan and so on in detail, discussing it, so that you can understand how theory is important in international politics. Primarily two of them, liberalism and Marxism. Because why theory is important? Because theory is a kind of lens or a perspective or a framework which gives you a kind of whatever you can say approach, no, vantage point, or a telescope, no, through which you look at the world. And we all know that whatever lens we wear, that is what colors our world, no. So theories are important, and they have certain presuppositions. That is your job to understand which theory, what is their presupposition, what do they suppose before discussing, no. That is how we will make sense of it. So that's all from my side for today. Tomorrow probably I will avoid being late. It's early morning class is too much, but nonetheless we will continue the lecture format, two lectures per topic. And the next lecture probably is on Marxist approach to international politics, which